Welcome to another episode of Truth in Basketball with George Karl. It's Brett Goldberg. Coach, good afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Denver. I haven't done one of these Truth in Basketball episodes with you in a while. You've been hanging out with Sandy Clough and Swipa and others more, but it's good to see you, and we're about to turn the corner on big-time NBA playoff basketball, so it's a good week as well for us to be chatting.
And the Knicks are in it. Actually, the New York Knicks have made the playoffs and think they're going to win a series.
Yeah, they were right about Jalen Brunson.
They were right indeed, and we are excited to be talking to our guest today. This is Professor David Hollander from New York University. David has a renowned class called How Basketball Can Save the World. We are intrigued, we are curious, we are excited to talk about the philosophy, the platform, the new book that exists. Professor David, we call you David, and it's good to have you on today. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's an honor to be on this show to talk about something that I just think is like nothing else in the world, and that's why it can save the world.
Why is that? Go into that a little bit. Why is it like nothing else in the world, and why can it save the world?
Well, I mean, that's the whole big enchilada, right? I mean, look, think about who's been running the show. For a millennia, we've been having the same kinds of leaders: monarchs, military types, religious types, economists, lawyers, politicians, and they've come up with schools of thought, ways of organizing our world to make it more fair, more meaningful, more just. Call them isms: capitalism, socialism, communism, deism, theism, utilitarianism. And I guess the question I start to ask, the premise is, after a millennia of the same kinds of leaders employing the same kinds of thinking, how come we still have the same kinds of problems, rinse and repeat, to a same but different, perhaps progressively more conflicted and confused? And all I'm saying is I'd like to look at this other thing, a new source of ideas, something that I know that when I go to this place, and other people feel this way too, when I go to this place, this space called a basketball court, I find great peace, great balance. Best parts of myself are integrated. The world makes sense. My relations with other people gets right. And from there, I try to take that understanding, that feeling, and just give it words, give it structure, and see if we could apply that to 21st century problems.
That's outstanding. Wow. That's a great intro, man.
Thank you.
Well, what I want to know is, because, I believe the game of sports, but the game of basketball is similar thoughts that you have. But I want to know, what class do you teach at NYU? Is it a sociology, psychological, or is it a combination of a lot?
Right. So it's funny, Coach, because I wear a bunch of different hats, but mostly I teach sports business, or just kind of applied business in general. But this course, called How Basketball Can Save the World, is a humanities course. It is using this social form, basketball, as a lens, and just being like, okay, what if, let's talk about race. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about gender. Let's talk about loneliness. And I want to see what basketball is intended to do, how it's operated in the world, and what the world has told us it means, and see if we can come up with a different kind of language, something that hasn't really been used yet or successfully. And so I guess it's a sociology, a philosophy course. In the bookstores, they put it under social philosophy, whatever that means.
And the big question I have for you today is, I have a 19-year-old child that is very much independent thinker, goes to Washington University in St. Louis.
Yes.
And she is way out there. She is a progressive liberal,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit further.
Yeah.
And she is sometimes difficult to handle.
Yeah.
And I want to know how today's 20-year-old students take this course.
You know, so by the way, funny, I'll be talking at Washington University next Friday.
Really?
At sports and society course. I forget the exact name of it. Professor Noah Cohen. So just to let you know, maybe she can find that. But it's a really important question you're asking, because the whole bigger question is, how do we reach these young people? How do we talk to them in a way where they're like, you can't talk to me. You're not even speaking my language. I don't understand you. You don't get where I'm coming from. You don't get the way we are. And this, how basketball can save the world. I'm trying to create that social currency. I am trying to meet them where they are. I'm saying, hey, you don't want to talk about the history of Western civilization. You don't want to talk about certain types of political thought. I just want to talk about this game that I know, while in the past 130 years, countries have formed and deformed, ideologies have been proven and disproven, people have lived and died, businesses have formed and dissolved. This thing has only grown in ubiquity and influence. And why don't we just ask ourselves, you want to talk about a now thing? This thing. And it's very attractive.
David, let me jump in on that and ask you the question, because we talk about this all the time. George has been in the epicenter of this sport for a half a century, for 50 years, at the highest levels, playing for Dean Smith, forming and playing for the ABA and all of that. From your perspective, because you sound, at your core, you sound like a hooper. Why has this become arguably, or probably inarguably, the second most popular sport on the globe? And where do you see it going from here as a sport?
Well, as a sport, so let me, if I may, I'm gonna give kind of two answers to that. One is there's two other sports that arguably are more popular. More people play them. One is cricket, but it's not everywhere. It's only in certain places. Basketball is everywhere. The most popular sport is soccer. More people play it, more people consume it, but it doesn't have the influence that basketball has. It doesn't create the music. It doesn't have it didn't revolutionize the sneaker industry, which has revolutionized the footwear industry. Bankers are wearing basketball shoes to work. And so even if you look at Paris Saint-Germain, which is a vaunted, soccer brand, they've got the Jumpman. They have a basket. In order to be more market relevant and cooler, they put the Jumpman on their jerseys. I don't think you'll ever see a basketball jersey with a soccer player on it. So I don't think this sport is, I think this sport is only going to get bigger. You listen to a guy like Masai Ujiri, who's dedicated to building 100 courts across the continent of Africa. You can't go anywhere in the world and not see a hoop either attached to the side of a barn in the plains in South America. It's everywhere. That's the sport. Now, something that takes up so much space culturally, commercially, athletically. Here's what I'm saying, and partly in answering Coach Karl's previous question. You can go to college and you could get a degree in dance, you could get a degree in art, you can get a degree in music, you can get a degree in drama. And I think that's valid. I think these are things that teach you about the human condition. You can learn about history, you can learn about human relationships, all this kind of thing. I don't understand why athletics is different. I don't understand why it's over there. Because I know, and you and Coach Karl knows better than anyone, that that the playing is learning, just like the creating of art is learning, just like the playing of music is learning, just like all that time spent in class, when these guys are playing and practicing, that should be validated academically. That's where I want this to go.
How successful was your class? How long have you taught it? And where and how can we blow this up a little bit more than it's blown up?
Yes, sir. I mean, just by talking to you, really, and I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, the kinds of conversations with folks like you immediately elevate and begin to get more people listening. I've taught this class for 4 years. I had your teammate George Gervin in class. That was a treat. As well as other, wonderful basketball players, Sue Bird, Tamika Catch, all kinds of people. And at our peak, I think a year ago, we had 157 people in class. This year it's 132. And so it fluctuates. But that's and anybody in the university. It's a very NYU is the largest private university in the country, so it's like 35,000 undergrads, something like that. But anyone from any of the schools, the art school, the social work school, the business school, can take this course. And I think if you spread the word, if you want to, I've been fortunate. The NBA has asked me to speak at their junior NBA conference. They said, let us fly out to talk to the G League when they have their sales and marketing conference. It's the kind of book that, it sounds, you hear the title, you're like, yeah, all right, what is this guy talking about? And then people talk to me or they read the book and they say, oh, and so it's got kind of a long tail. It's beginning to go deeper and wider.
Before we get into the platform, the philosophy, the class, the book is based around 13 guiding principles. And I think there's a couple that we really want to spotlight and elevate in this conversation. And we'll get to that in a minute. What would be interesting to maybe have you share before we do that is a story from class, or a story of a student who took this and went down a different path or grew as a result of that. The class and all of it is obviously new, you said, within the last 4 years, but has this been transformational for a student or through a particular experience?
I got a really good story for you. Have you heard of the saint of basketball? Have you heard that story?
George, I have not.
Little story. Christmas time, 2021, I read the New York Times about a village in central Italy called Porretta Terme. The village has a church that's been around since the 15th century. And in the church, there's a shrine to basketball. And people come from all over the country and pray at this shrine for a better jump shot, better season, healed meniscus. And the village is frustrated because they've made petition to the Vatican to have their local Madonna, the likeness of Mary, that's on also a bridge from the 15th century, connects the church to the village, to have the local Madonna recognized as the first patron saint of basketball. And so I read this story. I'm like, oh my God, it's my course. And I call my TA from the year ago. He's Italian, but he's working at NBC Sports now in New York. And I'm like, Alessandro, you believe this? He's like, I know, it's crazy. He's like, I'm home for Christmas in Bologna. The church isn't that far away. He drives to church. He grabs a priest. The priest, the first guest in my first class last year in how basketball saved the world. First hour. I'm like, Father, what can I do? How can I help you? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, class, 157 students. Class, no grade. Everybody send me one sentence. Why does basketball deserve its own saint? And I put it together in this big letter, like the Declaration of Independence, and I send it to the Pope, right? And somehow Italian media got a hold of this, La Repubblica, which is like the Wall Street Journal of Italy, big paper, daily paper. And they print the letter in full. And this big feature story, they're like, these 157 students, this professor at NYU, this is the first international gesture of support. This could, change things. That was March 2022. yesterday was 1 year ago, Good Friday, April 12th, 2022, the Pope recognized the first ever patron saint of basketball.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Oh man, that is tremendous. It's outside of Bologna.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's outside of Bologna.
I lost the European Championship in Bologna 1 year.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they got that blood feud, right? Between the two teams. And yeah, that's it. There's a love of the game there. And what's incredible, Coach, is that I learned this is the first team sport ever to have its own saint, not soccer, which is very popular in Italy. So that tells you that even the Pope, it's time for something new. It's time to see it differently. Basketball.
So David, let's go into the framework you use and the 13 guiding principles. You highlighted a few that you thought would be most interesting to this conversation. So we'll just go down these 3 or 4. Cooperation, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the first ones in the list. Talk about cooperation and let's dive into it.
Yeah, you hear that word, it's like a word you learn in 2nd grade, and it sounds so trite, but it's different on a basketball court. You can walk onto a basketball court and not know anybody, and them not know you, and immediately start to find ways of knowing each other. Immediately, continuously, fluidly, in a small space where everybody's positionless, everybody's, kind of moving around. And when you have that immediate, fluid, continuous kind of me thinking about you, you thinking about me in a small space, I really see you. I really see you. And it teaches me how to be in space, move in space, manage space, share space with other people, to solve with other people. It builds the cooperation superpower after you do that for a game of empathy, where you really are kind of like, I know what he's thinking now. He knows what I'm thinking now. It's a remarkable level of cooperation. And, just like Martin Luther King once said, it's our inescapable mutuality. That's the point of basketball. We're supposed to be linked. Everything I do is supposed to affect you and vice versa. And it's a tremendous model to be a human being on the planet with other human beings on this planet, trying to manage and share space and figure each other out and do stuff together. That's how we solve division, disease. It starts with that kind of cooperation, being in space together.
That's amazing because when you start talking like that, my most memorable fun in basketball is on the playgrounds.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Where I would go and I wouldn't know half the people there. Sometimes I'd be chosen to play with guys I never played with before. And it was amazing how after 2 hours of pickup on the playground, you didn't want to leave.
Huh.
You didn't want to go home. You wanted to go hang. You wanted to go talk.
Yeah.
And so much of today's game is connection.
Yes.
And what I don't like about today's game is money breaks the connection. And the connection before, when it wasn't all about money,
That's right.
it was better. I think we still have the connection. But money, I've said 100 times when I speak, is money is going to kill the game. But the whole thing right now is we got to understand that 95% of basketball isn't on TV.
That's right.
It isn't on TV.
That's right.
And now what's going on in college basketball today that makes me a little sick is NIL is it going to destroy basketball in Division II and Division III schools? I hope it doesn't. I hope the student athlete still remains the foundation of basketball.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And even if, look, it's fine. You want to have a professional league. You want guys to earn lots of money, and it's a big entertainment thing. That's fine. But what you said is what I say the same thing wherever I speak, is that this game belongs to all of us. This game was actually meant as a social institution as much as an athletic institution. We need to put it back in its right place. Use it. Don't just play it because you want to be good at it. Play it because it makes you a better person. It lets you connect with other people. There's guys I play pickup with. I have no idea what their name is, but I see them on the street or I see them in a deli, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And we're good because we know each other. I mean, I don't know. When you talk about pickup basketball, is there a better, freer, more inclusive space? Nobody checks your ID. Nobody checks your citizenship. Nobody gives you a credit check. There's no gatekeeper, no commissioner. The only rules are the rules that the people there agree to. I don't know any other space like that in the world.
The next one you've got, let's keep going through these. They're going to get even better, I have a feeling. Positionlessness.
Yeah.
So positionlessness, I think you must have made up this word, although I think we know very well what you're talking about. And I think the latest collective bargaining agreement includes the fact that those receiving awards will not be doing so on a position basis, but based on their accomplishments, which makes this even, more relevant and timely. Describe this one from the platform perspective.
People love to talk about positionless basketball today as the state of the game. Unicorns, people who are, again, tall guys who could do it all. That was always the vision for the game. When James Naismith had his last disciple, a guy named John McClendon, he took John McClendon. They were watching some kids play in a playground, and Naismith asked McClendon, "What do you see?" McClendon's like, I see them attacking the other team when they have the ball and attacking the basket when they have the ball. Naismith's like, "Yep, that's the game." See ya. And McClendon came up with this idea called the fast break, where you have to understand space, you have to understand lanes. This is not something you don't practice, but you practice by doing. You solve as things are changing on the ground. You become what you must become in the moment of play. There's no going back to the huddle. There's no calling a timeout in the middle of a fast break and say, hold on a second, we're going to I'm no stepping out of the batter's box. This mindset of I need to be what I have to be as the world and the facts and circumstances before me change, that's the future of work. That's the future of people's careers in a world that changes so rapidly, technologically, legally, environmentally. We know today that kids who graduate college right now are going to change their job 6 or 7 times, maybe even their entire field 3 or 4 times. Entire fields will become obsolete. Who is going to know how to run the break in that kind of a world? It's the position. You're right, it's a made-up word. It's a positionlessness. It's a sense of none of us are just one thing. That's as human beings, we need to be able to grow, adjust, solve. And when you have that mindset, you don't have to Google it to see what somebody else thought. They'll be Googling you. That's the where the leadership comes from.
Wow. Go on to the next one. I like the stories. Let's go. Keep them going.
Sanctuary is lower down on the list. I think they're all of equal value, but you've got this one towards the bottom. Go here.
Yeah, they're not ranked, and they're all important. It's a progression in a way. They overlap. The first 5 principles are kind of how you develop as a human being based on your actions on the court. The next 6 are for social change. And the last 2 Transcendence is one of the last two. Sanctuary. It's this idea. Like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, a lot of folks go to a basketball court to find that peace, to be away from the world. And what we're talking about really is play. The idea of play. People like to say sports is like life. You hear that a lot. Actually, sports is not like life. Life is like incomprehensible. People have been trying to figure it out since the beginning of time. It's unpredictable. You can't control it. The consequences can be dire: death, disease, hunger, shelter. These are, play, athletic play, sports is what you do to not have those dire consequences. You can have the full range of human vice and virtues displayed and experienced. You can be the hero, the coward, the leader, the teammate, win, lose. But unlike life, we know where sports is played. It's very distinct in locality and duration. It's here on this field or here on this court. We know when it begins and ends, first 1 to 21 or 4 quarters or 9 innings. Rules. There's no rules in life. I wish there aren't. Rules. You know what's in bounds, you know what's out of bounds. You know what you're allowed to do, you know what you're not allowed to do. And that gives you a sense of safety. You can now play, you can now do all these things, knowing what the rules are, knowing where the game begins and ends. And what happens in that space is you begin to hear yourself. Humanity begins to stabilize. And it's where the new ideas come from. And in a world right now where there's so much what I call digital oppression, where we're being geo-tracked. You got to get on your phone and respond. They're surveilling you. They're counting you. The algorithm is assessing you and analyzing you and spitting back at you what you did yesterday and telling you do more of this today because you did that yesterday. The only way we break out of the algorithmic hive mind is to create these kinds of spaces, sanctuary spaces, I call them. Meaning, we need to start valuing our own experiences as our own. Everything we do doesn't have to belong to someone else for some other purpose. And it's very important because, even in Jonestown, where they drank the Kool-Aid, the only folks who didn't drink the Kool-Aid at Jonestown were the Jonestown basketball team players. It's an incredible story. When Jim Jones said, hey, guys, it's time to drink the Kool-Aid, they all knew what that meant. They meant it's time to commit mass suicide. He called up the basketball players, said, I know you just finished a game over in the other village. You got to come back now and drink the Kool-Aid. And they were like, you know what? We don't want to do that. Because I know that basketball, maybe it's because of the fluid movement, maybe it's because of the small space, maybe it's because of the constant thinking about each other and seeing each other. But it creates a space of truth and freedom that human beings are really hungry for. And it's the only way you break out of a structure and you come up with the new ideas. You actually hear your truth. People every day they say mindfulness, try mindfulness, try meditation. That's what this stands for. That's what so many folks who play basketball say it does for them. It releases them and allows them to actually be in a space of true self-determination.
What's funny is Coach Smith, who mentored me for many years, he always wanted the basketball court and the locker room to be a sanctuary of only us. He didn't want writers in the locker room. He didn't want people in the practice sessions. He wanted it to be just that. And he actually told me once that when he put practice plans together, that he always had 1 or 2 or 3 drills, like a service in church, that was a repetition every day. You had to do it. Every day you had to do this drill. Every day you had to do a passing drill. And I remember one of the angriest moments I ever got. It was with David Stern was telling all the coaches that he's going to put a microphone in the locker room. And I said, that is bullshit, man. That is our space. Yeah. And you cannot invade our space. Oh. What is done there is sacred to us. And of course, now we have microphones everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
I think it bothers coaches, but I actually think it bothers players too.
Well, it is. It's the same kind of thing. And I like your analogy to church. It's like, would you put microphones in the church? Something very special happens in that space. And if you really want human beings to think about, so you talked about Dean Smith's drills, which I love that story, because I often say when I do these talks, I say, well, let me ask you, what's the point of religion? Point of religion is to make better people, make better people, make better communities. Okay, how do you do that? Well, you go to the space, the church or the synagogue or the mosque, and you do the drills. You do the ritual exercises. You sing together, you pray together, you bow, you get up there, whatever you do. And then you go out of that space, that sanctuary space, and you're a better person. You're a better citizen. You've done the exercise. You're a nicer family member. I believe, Coach, it is the same. That basketball course is the same sanctuary. You go there, you do that exercise, and you leave that space, and you're not going to kick the dog as much. You're going to be a better person on the street. Basic things.
Fantastic. What's the next one?
We're going to do this one last because I think we could find our way through all 13 if we wanted to, but we won't do all 13. We'll save the other ones for later. Transcendence. It's the last one on the list. Maybe, as you said earlier, it's kind of the culmination of all. Describe that one, and we'll build from there.
Yeah, I mean, look, these principles, what I'm doing with them is I'm saying the game stands for these things. What happens in the game, or what the game is, meant or shown us, stands for values, for principles. And as you go through the principles, there's ways of solving very important, very acute 21st century problems. But I truly believe that it's not enough to do that. It's not enough just to solve what's in front of our face. Any great society must go and think about things that are well beyond what they already know, what they've already done. The game of basketball, one of the things about the game of basketball is that the goal is elevated and you leave your feet, you play it in the air, you defy gravity.
Some of us.
Yeah, right. I don't want to tell you how my vertical leap's doing either these days. But we get excited by that in basketball. It's how high can somebody go? How long can they stay up there? It's as if we're defying our earthly condition. We know we can't defy gravity. We know we can't fly. But it's a basketball dream to fly, or to dare to dream to fly. And the only way you do that is to jump and see. That's what basketball stands for me. The elevation, the transcendence.
The freedom. The one thing when I played, I have always felt when I played well at a high level, like a college, I was better in college than I was in pro. But I had a couple games in pro ball. And when you play well, you feel totally free. You don't think about the score. You just play. You're in flow. You're in rhythm. And the game has it has a floating mentality to it. That when you play the game well and you're connected and you're probably winning, that you feel lifted, you feel lighter, you feel, I don't know, heavenly a little bit.
Yeah, I've and Bill Russell has said the same thing. He said there are nights when things were flowing so right. He wasn't even, and he probably was winning, but he wasn't thinking about winning or losing. He just felt high. He felt like he called himself a hawk, like he was flying above the room. That's great,
Yeah.
man. That's what we want.
I I mean, like I've compared basketball to jazz a little bit of getting a little rhythm, and there's a beat to the game when you're engaged, and the physicality and the emotion and the connection, all those things are a part of feeling in a good place, I guess.
Yes, sir. And it is like jazz, and your teammates are the ensemble, and you start to riff, and then it segues into one of them riffing, and then it comes when you're doing it right. It's genius.
Uh, I got one last one for you. How good a player are you?
Well, sir, I'll put it this way. My brother used to hold our high school scoring record, and he did it before there were 3-pointers and before freshmen could play. So for a long time, he only played 3 years and leading scorer. My sister, 1,000 points, and he played pro internationally. My sister, 1,000 points, 1,000 assists. I hold one record in my high school. That's most technical fouls in a season and a career.
Let me ask you a couple questions on my end to bring this towards the finish line, David. This was passion. This was philosophy. It's now a class. It's a platform. It's a book. Where do you think about this in terms of the going forward nature of it, and how does it become actionable? When if you look at this in 20, 25, 30 years from now, how do you look at it and go, yeah, that philosophy accomplished what I wanted it to?
Broad strokes. I would like to see the world begin to value basketball and other sports. It's you learn lots of great things from all sports. I just happen to think basketball in particular is really good at solving 21st century problems. But broad stroke, I would like a return to basketball as a social institution or an educational institution, not just an athletic one. It's not just about being the best or being a pro. It's about what you gain from engaging in this exercise. That's the broad stroke. Tactical and strategic stuff. I'd like there to be a college major in athletics or basketball. You can get a degree in basketball studies, just like you can get a degree in art or dance or music or theater. Tactically, I would like to see a return to schools, elementary schools, grade schools, of primary placement of whatever you want to call it, athletics, recreation, gym, that equal to math, history. We have bodies, and our bodies and our minds work together. And you want to punish a kid, don't take away recess every time. Try this one. You're not going to math today, Jimmy. I would just like to see maybe a minister of sport in the United States. So this is where I want it to go. I want people to rethink what sports means in our society.
Amazing. I don't know why these two questions popped up to me during the course of this conversation, other than sheer curiosity. So take them as that. Your favorite court that you've ever seen or played on, and your favorite all-time player.
So I my favorite court will always be the court in my backyard. So one that my dad just laid down poured a bunch of concrete, asphalt, 15 by 15 foot, full hoop, square backboard. And yeah, that'll always be a very, very important space for me. I mean, I've played in the cage at West 4th Street, and it's hard to beat that fun. But yeah, so that's it. I want to preface the last question. Who's my favorite player? Because I don't want anybody to take this as a GOAT conversation. By the way, I don't believe in those conversations. I don't participate in them. All players, there's so many different kinds of great players, and basketball is a team sport. But when I was 9 years old, the first professional sports event I ever attended was the 1974 ABA New York Nets in the Nassau Coliseum. I saw Dr. J, Larry Keenan, Super John Williamson, Billy Paultz, and Brian Taylor, among others, win their first ABA championship. And I thought it was the greatest thing I ever saw. And Dr. J, I got to, because the ABA and the NBA weren't playing against each other at that time, I got to enjoy a guy named Walt Clyde Frazier and Julius Erving, and I didn't have to pick one. But Dr. J, from those New York Nets, boy, he really changed my idea of what you could do.
If I had bet $1,000 to George before you answer that question, I would have bet Dr. J was the answer to that question. George, are you surprised by that, or does that sit just about right after spending the last 45 minutes with Professor Hollander?
I would say the soulfulness of Dr. J, both as a man and as a player. Being in New York, you've witnessed his humanity probably a little more than most people. I think he's more like the Jackie Robinson or the Martin Luther King of sport.
Yeah.
With his dignity and his humility.
Dignity.
And I don't, does he know about our project, Brett?
Professor Hollander knows a little bit about the ABA production we're working on right now, but why don't you expand a little?
Well, so much of my story, it's kind of, it came up about when George, was it George Forbes? Or
No, George Floyd. Yeah.
George Floyd got killed. It stirred a lot of things in my mind. And the one thing was, the story of the ABA hasn't been told. It's been hidden. It's been swept under the rug. And my belief, the NBA and the ABA in the 70s was struggling, both of them. The ABA didn't have the financial backing of TV money, and they weren't going to make it. But the NBA wasn't doing very well either. No. And what happened when they merged, the NBA was a bunch of egomaniac bullies, white supremacists, whatever you want to call them. They didn't give the ABA any credit.
No.
But if you look at the explosion of the NBA wants to give it to Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. I think it started with the merger in 1976. 2 or 3 years before Bird and Magic. And that's kind of what we're trying to sell, that today's game, the way the game is played today, is more ABA.
It's ABA. The ABA was doing it. They were already doing it. Yeah. Well, you're look, I agree. I was there. That was what people who love basketball were really focusing on the ABA and enjoying the ABA, seeing the truth of the game, the unfiltered, and it was so fresh. I think it scared the hell out of people, and they couldn't handle it until it became so good. They were like, "Listen, we'll merge the whole league just to get that Dr. J guy."
Well, I'll tell you what, David, we'll do when our 4-episode documentary on Amazon comes out, we'll do a special screening in your class
Oh, I love
or
it.
for NYU with George, and Julius is one of our executive producers as well. So we'll hopefully bring him to the opportunity as well.
I would have so he came to the class last year via Zoom. And I've never seen the class do this via Zoom. You know, the screen was dark. His video wasn't up yet. It just said Julius Erving. And then as soon as it went up, the whole place went, oh, you know, they just gasped.
That's how George, that's how you describe Dean Smith talking about Julius Erving as if you were preparing to play God in the UNC UMass game in 1971.
We only beat him by 50. So
But he was
Julius
godlike. He just didn't have anyone around him.
But he had Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino was his starting guard in the backcourt.
Oh, that's hilarious. I didn't know that.
Wow.
We end our Truth in Basketball episodes with a little bit of a different approach to what Coach Dean Smith called the thought of the day. They ended their practices with the thought of the day at UNC. We call it the truth of the day. George, I'll give it to you for a truth of the day, and then David will give his truth of the day, and we'll call it a day.
Well, I love the conversation because it stirs up a lot of my beliefs. I give speeches on leadership and teamwork based upon the game, but you're taking it a step further. And all I got to say is I hope we can figure out how to help you. I love the idea. I'm reading a book called Homo. What am I going book?
Homo
Deus by how the world's going to become. I bet your book might be just as good.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for recognizing what I am trying to do. I am trying to take it somewhere, but somewhere it hasn't gone before, basketball, and really see it as a super powerful idea. But my truth to you is, you were in the Basketball Hall of Fame. You were one of the great basketball presences of all time. I'm a hack. I'm a guy who played in my backyard and played playgrounds, but nothing pleases me more as I've been on this journey than to talk with you this afternoon. The same way I talked to a group of moms at a prestigious private Catholic school in New York City this morning, and the same nodding of the head, the same kind of, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's that simple thing. I get it. I've felt it. I've been there. You're a person of great platform, but I must say nothing energizes me more than just that head nod of, I get what you're saying.
David, thank you. You went deeper than soulful.
Oh, wow. Coach, that is a high compliment. Thank you, sir.
And we've done a lot of these podcasts, and this is one of the biggest soulful ones we've ever had.
David, where do people go? howbasketballcansave-the-world.com is a site.
Yes.
Your books are available there. How else, if someone wants to sort of subscribe to this, do they start to click in and follow along?
Yeah, people are digging our Instagram at How Basketball Can Save the World. It's getting a lot of action. I've been learning more about Instagram this past year, and people reach out pretty effectively that way. And you can find a lot of information on our website, howbasketballcansave-the-world.com, and buy the book there and all that kind of thing.
Good. Well, consider us subscribers. We will follow up. We would love for Kobe Karl, new winning coach of the G League champion Delaware Bluecoats, to come see you soon. We'll come see you soon. On behalf of David Hollander and George Karl and Brett Goldberg, thank you, gentlemen. This has been an absolute pleasure.
David, thank you. Blessings to you.
Blessings to you. The pleasure has been mine. The honor, truly.